Hello and welcome back. I want to talk a little bit more about using the iron sights on an AR-15 today. I did a previous video on this where I was talking about, how to center the that front post inside the ghost ring. Now, a lot of people will say that your eye will naturally center that front post on its own. However, I was training somebody and I experienced a situation where they were having a hard time centering it. So I needed to come up with a mechanism for them to be able to shoot, consistently. So the mechanism that I came up with, the mechanism that I came up with is I was having them anchor the ears of the front sight post. In the last video I was calling them leaves, like leaves of a flower. Today I'll call them arms or bunny ears. But what I was having them do was anchor these bunny ears to the side of the ghost ring. So what we're talking about is, I'll do it this way so you can see, these little ears that stick up on the side of the front sight post, anchoring them to the ghost ring so that they were basically touching at the 11 o'clock and the 1 o'clock position, or 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock position, depending on how they fall on your AR. Just by doing that, the young lady that I was training, she had an immediate improvement. So that coupled with a little work on the trigger squeeze, and she was shooting really nice groups. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention in this video is these little bunny ears are not necessarily going to be the same on every rifle. And furthermore, the size of the ghost rings in the back are not going to be the same on each rifle. So that's something for you guys to be familiar with. Another possible option, right? If you're looking through the ghost ring and it's just like there's no way that, if you get these two bunny ears to attached to the side here, it might just be that like your front sight post is like way up there or something, or way down here. Another possibility is anchoring the bottom, to the bottom of your ghost ring. Okay, so this is not just an issue of anchoring those bunny ears specifically. You could also anchor that to the bottom depending on what the size of your front sight post is and what the size of your ring is. Okay. This is a 16-inch barrel. If you have a 20-inch barrel, okay, you're also going to see a different picture. Most likely, if you're using a 20-inch barrel, this, because it's further out, this is going to be a lot smaller. So you may not be able to anchor to the sides. In which case, you just want to make sure that you have an equal distance between these two horns over here. Okay, so that's another thing to consider. So the length of your barrel is going to affect this. On the other hand, if you have a really short barrel, like if you're shooting out like a 10-inch barrel or something, at the point where this is centered, these may extend way past your circle. So that's another thing to consider. On this particular rifle over here, it kind of just works out perfect that when these two bunny ears touch the sides over here, that's kind of perfectly in the center. Okay, so that's how it works. Now I have another rifle that I tried out that had a different sight on it, and the front sights on that, basically the two bunny ears actually made this big U on it. Right, it was a flip-up sight, and when I looked at it in the ghost ring, that U was actually bigger than the circle. So I didn't have the ability to anchor. So that's another, so that's a consideration in selecting your, if you're getting flip-up sights, selecting your front sight or your rear sight. Okay, so that's a consideration. How things are going to line up and how that's going to make it easier or harder for you to shoot. Okay? So another thing to consider is when you flip from the small aperture to the large aperture, there might be a change as well. Okay. In some cases, it may be intentional, right? Because in some cases, like, it might be that, you zero in with the large aperture, let's say inside of whatever, 100 yards or 200 yards, and then if you flip to the smaller aperture, okay, which they're intending for you to use at distance, like all of a sudden, it makes an adjustment so that you don't have to adjust. Basically, it automatically adjusts to to bring you to give you a better position at, let's say, 200 yards or 300 yards or whatever. So that's something that you have to consider. In some cases, it's intentional, and it'll probably be it'll probably say so on the package. In other cases, it might just be because you're buying a cheap cheap sights. Like if you're buying $30 or $40 sights, it might be unintentional. It's just not something they paid attention to. So there's a small difference as you flip from the big circle to the small circle. You probably want to initially zero in on that small circle, and then flip over to the zero in on the big circle, all right, which is intended for close range, and then flip over to the small circle, and then see what that does for you. Does it move at all, or does it not move at all? So again, something for you guys to consider. And I just looked at two rifles today, and the way that those leaves fall on the ghost ring is completely different. So that's something that I have to that I have to consider when I'm shooting. Okay? Yesterday I shot this just with those just with the iron sights, and I managed to get a half-inch group with this palmetto at 50 yards. Okay, I didn't quite do as well today. I mean, this was the first group I shot. It was a little bit off to the left. I think that's a 1-inch group. Let's measure that out. So yeah, today I shot a 1-inch group with the iron sights at 50 yards. Okay, and then what I did is I made an adjustment. Let me hold it up. See, that was a little bit off to the left. A little bit off to the left. And I made an adjustment. Okay, this was actually this was the next one. And what I did is I got it kind of centered, and in the center. Then so that was the next grouping I shot, and that's about maybe 1.25 inches right there. And then what I did is I did another grouping, right? Because there's two separate groupings over here, so you can kind of just draw a line over here. So what I did here is rather than put the front sight post under that blue this blue tape, I put it at the bottom of the paper. And now of course the bottom of the paper is a little bit wider, so immediately the grouping opened up a little bit. So having a smaller point to focus on is going to make it, it basically will allow you to get a tighter group. Okay, so when I went to the bottom of the paper, it opened up a little bit, versus when I was shooting in the center under the blue tape here. You see what that grouping actually is. From the two furthest pins, it's 1.5 inches. So I got 1.5 inch grouping at 50 yards with that. Then what I did is I went to the larger aperture, right? I flipped it to the large one to see what I could get. And yeah, with the large aperture, it opened up. Now the thing with the large aperture, it opened up to about 4.5 inches. The thing with the large aperture, what I found is that because the ghost ring is wider, it takes a lot more effort to actually, to visually see these arms on the edge of the ring. Okay, even though there was no adjustment, I mean, basically I was able to line it up, and I was able to basically get center. So there was no distance adjustment. There was no change from going from the small aperture to the large aperture. Okay, but what happened is visually, now because the circle was bigger, I was having a harder time focusing, being able to look at these two things and then come back to the center. Okay, when I was shooting with the small aperture, I basically just took a quick look at this, and then I went back and I focused on the center, and these two I can kind of, I can kind of sense where these two things were. Okay, so I'm basically I'm still, don't get confused with this part. You're still focusing on your front sight. What I basically do is I take a look at these two, I anchor them down, and I go to the front sight. And it takes very little effort to keep it in the center. But when I went to the larger aperture, now there was a change, like visually, for me to go from there to there, back to there to here. There was just a lot more work. So, that's one of the things that you're going to run into as you're working with, from small aperture to a large aperture. But like I said, these sights are different on different guns, especially if you have an aftermarket like I have on this. I mean, obviously the front sight post came with the gun, but the rear sight is an aftermarket. So, different aftermarkets are going to be a little bit different. So that's just something that you gotta test out and see how it works for you. And if you don't like it, you buy another one. So something for you guys to think about. Test it out on your guns, see how it works out, and by all means, give me some feedback. Let me know how it does work out for you. Post it in my comment section. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.